I'm Angie Bezik, and I am the Vice Chair of the Legislative Affairs Committee for the Greater Williamsburg Chamber and Tourism Alliance Business Council. And I'm with Tom Cosgrove, who is the Vice Chair of the Virginia Peninsula Chamber of Commerce. And we are delighted today to have with us Congresswoman Elaine Luria, who is the incumbent candidate for the U.S. House of Representatives, 2nd Congressional District. Welcome to our chamber interviews today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to see you both.
We're very excited that you have come to talk to us about the things that are important to the business community here on the peninsula. We'll have 5 questions for you on military, healthcare, workforce, economy, and transportation. But first, if you would just share for our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Well, certainly. Well, thank you so much for having me join you today and have had the opportunity to interact with the Peninsula Chamber and the Greater Williamsburg Business Council since I've been in Congress. I am approaching the end of my first term, and prior to coming to Congress, I was a 20-year Navy veteran, so came to Norfolk originally. Stationed on a ship here, and served for 20 years as a surface warfare officer and nuclear engineer. Deployed multiple times to the Middle East and Western Pacific, and ended up having command a combat unit of 400 sailors at Little Creek at the end of my career. And my husband is also a Navy veteran of 27 years. And so we've settled here since about 2000 and call this home. I was also a small business owner myself. About 6 years ago, started a retail small business in Norfolk, grew to a second location in Virginia Beach, and just had a great opportunity to be part of the small business community here in Hampton Roads and watch that business grow and be successful, and then pass it on into new hands now and see it still continuing. So definitely always enjoy the opportunity to engage with the business community, and have been focusing a lot of my efforts in this very challenging time that we're facing now. With COVID, both the public health aspects of it and the impacts on small businesses, to be able to help out through legislation and helping with the various programs that are available to small businesses, and most of all taking the feedback from the business community back to Washington to help improve and change some of those regulations, such as the payroll protection program, and changing the parameters of that, seeking to have seasonality, and some of the other things that we got as feedback from small businesses to help them be able to continue through this challenging time and flourish on the other side of it. So it's been a great honor to work with the business community on the peninsula and all around the district, and had the opportunity recently to have a meeting with your group in Williamsburg. Senator Kane and I did as well, and sat down with Mayor Pons in Williamsburg, and really understanding some of the unique challenges of that region and the dependence on the tourism industry, and just how COVID has impacted that and created additional challenges. So glad to be here today and talk about some of those issues.
Well, Congresswoman, thank you for that introduction, and certainly with your military background that you mentioned, we don't need to explain to you the role that the defense industry plays here in our economy in Hampton Roads. During his 2016 campaign, then candidate Trump advocated for what he called a great rebuilding of the armed services. And since getting elected, he's approved budgets with defense spending of well over $700 billion. Multi-part question, regardless of the outcome of this year's presidential race, would you support the continuation of the current efforts to rebuild the armed services? If so, how would you plan to fund the rebuilding given the increasing costs of military personnel and acquisitions? Or if not, where would you seek cuts in the defense budget, and how would you reprioritize funding?
Well, obviously with the importance of the military in Hampton Roads, we all know that is really sort of one of the cornerstones of our economy here. 42% of the economy in the region is related directly to the Navy and DoD. And then obviously on the peninsula, we have NASA Langley as well. So it's not just DoD, but other federal agencies between Jefferson Lab, and we're the only congressional district with 2 major NASA facilities between Langley and Wallops Island. And so those are really crucial cornerstones of our economy. We build all the aircraft carriers, half the submarines here, and 1/4 of the shipbuilding and repair that happens in the entire country happens in this region. I definitely support a very strong defense budget out of the House last year. I actually supported the higher level than eventually passed, which was the Senate version of that bill at the 750 billion mark. And it is incredibly important that we maintain our national defense. And you know, I work on the Armed Services Committee. I'm the vice chair of the Sea Power Subcommittee. Congressman Rob Whitman, who's also up in the Williamsburg area, is the ranking Republican member. So we work very closely together on these issues related to sea power. And I've spent a lot of my time, you know, working with and trying to hold the Navy accountable for some of its shipbuilding programs. We've invested $13 billion in our newest carrier, the Ford, and due to some, I think, poor planning as far as prototyping some of the systems before the construction of the carrier, we might be lucky if it deploys 6 years late. So I think a big aspect of this is, you know, making sure that we spend those tax dollars appropriately. I've also spent a lot of time, you know, working with the Navy and Navy leadership on, you know, how the Navy deploys and specifically deploys its carrier strike groups, because I think that the efficiency that we get out of that and also the investments that we need to make in our industrial base to make sure that our ship repair happens effectively and the ships deploy on time and as planned is another efficiency that we can gain. So I know we don't have enough time to get way down in the weeds on this, but this is obviously one of the main things that I focus on serving on the Armed Services Committee and understand the importance not only to our national defense, but also to jobs and livelihood within the region. And you know, the defense budget is incredibly important. I understand that the nuclear deterrent is the cornerstone of our national defense, and with some of the new submarine programs we have, such as bringing the Columbia class online and maintaining that timeline is incredibly important for our national defense, and is something that will, you know, be a big investment for us as taxpayers, but is absolutely essential. So I will fully support this program.
That's great. Thank you. Under the assumption that we would have a vaccine for COVID-19 by the end of the year, and with the notion that we've all been sort of taken back to a level playing field here in the US and even globally, what 2 or 3 things do you think that Virginia should be doing now so that we can come out of the gate, so to speak, really strong and you know, accelerate our economy? And what should the business leaders here in Virginia be doing in order to prepare to be a role model for that quick, successful economic recovery?
Well, you know, I along with you, really hope that we have a vaccine very soon and that it's effective and that we can use that to make us safe on the public health front and, you know, curtail the health impacts of this and thus the economic impacts of this crisis that we've gone through. I think that there are a lot of opportunities on the other side of this to continue to develop and grow our economy. And specifically diversify our economy. We talk a lot in Hampton Roads about regionalism and opportunities to grow and diversify the economy. And there's a lot going on in the region that I think can help with that. There's a lot of new development with the cable landings and at the dam neck at the oceanfront in Virginia Beach and the data capabilities for that and the ability of data centers and other related industries to grow up in our region, and then the science and technology aspects related to that. I've been a strong proponent of helping with additional funding for Jefferson Lab. I know that they were a competitor for a major project. The alternate site was selected for that, but you know, between supporting the efforts at Jefferson Lab and NASA Langley, for example, I think that those are, you know, huge drivers of innovation and other peripheral industries on the peninsula and in that area. I think that one of the biggest things that I've heard throughout the community through COVID, and you know, as people and business owners struggle with the challenges of getting through COVID and, you know, how they're going to grow or change their business on the other side is discussions of access to capital. And I think that there's a lot of disparities in the community depending on the size of the business, minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, specifically rural businesses on the Eastern Shore, for example, that don't necessarily have ready or adequate access to capital to help them grow, even though that they, you know, desire to grow and have a possibility to expand their businesses. So I think that, you know, looking at some of those community lending institutions that can can reach more businesses that are typically underserved in our community, can help them grow and can help the business community grow as a whole. And, I know that there's been a lot of public assistance provided through the CARES Act and the Payroll Protection Program, for example. I think that, as businesses come out of this, making that process as simple and transparent and straightforward for businesses to determine if they qualify for the loan forgiveness so that they can plan, their financial situation and how they build their business back up moving forward is also very important. And I've been an advocate for assisting businesses through that and for also making that a simpler process for businesses that receive loans at the $150,000 or less amount, so that those loans can easily be forgiven and they can, as the health conditions permit, get back to business more or less in the new normal and continue to grow their businesses and allow their employees to keep those jobs and help our community.
Thank you. While we're talking about the economy, another critical piece of the economy is our workforce and having a good trained workforce. WIOA, the Workforce Investment and Opportunity Act, has been a critical tool in upskilling underemployed workers and providing career opportunities to unemployed individuals. WIOA is due to be reauthorized in 2021. So what do you see as the current successes and challenges of WIOA and the workforce development system that's come up around it? And what, if any, changes to the policy would you prioritize in a reauthorization?
Well, I think that education is, the bedrock of success for our children moving into the future. And part of that is workforce development. And, that is not only, coming up through the education system, but as you mentioned, adults who are looking for additional training to expand their careers or head into new careers. So I think that, reauthorization of the Workforce Training Act and, the partnership with industry within our community and our educational institutions. I know that we have a great partnership in Virginia between the community colleges and a lot of our businesses, and trying to facilitate those types of programs that will allow people to get the right kind of training for the jobs that are, potential for growth in our area. When I talk to businesses, one of the things I hear a lot is, we want to grow, but we have a really hard time finding people with specific skills and fill that in, whether it's welders or pipe fitters for the shipbuilding and repair industry, or whether it's people with the right technical training specifically related to cybersecurity and other growing industries. So, having a great pulse from industry and what those demands are, and then what we're, training and teaching our students coming out of school, or for people seeking further education, post-secondary education or training. I think the ability to make those types of job training programs affordable and accessible is very important. And I think that, doing that in partnership with industry to provide the best training to get the best paying jobs. For a long time, I feel like we've had, a path where every high school student is destined or should be supposedly looking towards going to college. But I think that there's so many jobs in our community, especially, and growing the industries here. Things like offshore wind are going to create a lot of jobs in this region. And we want, our young people to have those skills as electricians and welders and all of those types of things that, can be really good jobs to support a family. So making sure that, through our educational system, we provide those tools to be able to fill those jobs and grow those industries is very important. And lastly, we have a huge advantage here between the number of people who separate from the military every year, as well as military spouses. And I think that, as a region, trying to tie in a lot of these opportunities for workforce training to make it an attractive place for people separating from the military to stay and build on the skills that they've acquired in the military is a very important thing for our region. I sit on both the Armed Services Committee and the Military Personnel Subcommittee, which is on the DoD side before people leave, and then also on Veterans Affairs on the Economic Opportunity Subcommittee, which is the VA side. So both sides of the equation as far as transition from the military. So I think that there's a lot of opportunities to streamline that, and then specifically using those tools focused in our area here in Hampton Roads to take advantage of the large number of veterans we have separating, and try to entice them with good jobs and the right training to make this home and the place that they want to stay with their families.
That's great. Thank you. Little question on healthcare, or a two-part question. Do you support or oppose the repealing of the Affordable Care Act? And regardless of that position, do you have any specific ideas of how to expand access, keep costs down, and ensure that the health care delivery system remains financially sustainable?
Sure. So I oppose repealing the Affordable Care Act. I think that the Affordable Care Act has provided healthcare to millions of Americans who previously did not have access to that coverage because of pre-existing conditions. And I think that we should preserve the Affordable Care Act, but at its inception, it was not perfect. And I think it's something that we need to continue to revise and build on and do things to try to make healthcare more affordable. Here in Virginia, because of the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid expansion, we've been able to, it was just about a year and a half, a little more than that opened up for Virginians to become part of the Medicaid expansion program. And that made about 400,000 additional Virginians eligible for healthcare who were not before. So overall, the Affordable Care Act has provided, access to healthcare for people with pre-existing conditions and access to care for people who were otherwise not able to access that care because of their economic situation. That said, one of the most common things we hear is, healthcare is still expensive. Have been working a lot on legislation that would help cut prescription drug costs. I think that that's very important. One of the things anecdotally is, the rising cost of insulin, for example, and other life-saving medications that people depend on. People are having to make choices between those types of medications that they need every day, and other essential things within their lives, and we need to make sure that we can curb the rising costs of medications and make those more affordable. I'm in support of what's called a public option. So basically that would be providing people the option, voluntary, to participate in a program such as buying into Medicare at a younger age. Providing a federally administered program that would be an option for people. They could still keep their own private insurance, whatever other options that they preferred, but if they chose to buy into the program of a public option, could help drive the overall costs down on the marketplace, and help as another means to help make healthcare more affordable.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And final question for today, and the topic is transportation. Our current transportation management system is complex. It includes public airports, ports, roads, bridges, tunnels, interstates, and more. And all of it's governed by a hodgepodge of entities, authorities, state, local, federal governments, even some private entities. This disparate form of governance and the funding streams impede efforts to provide quality and efficient transportation systems. To address these challenges, particularly as localities and regions grow into mega regions, how do we create a structure where all the puzzle pieces fit into an interwoven and more functional system?
Well, transportation is definitely a challenge in our region, and we're seeing some, great things coming up with the, widening of I-64, the expansion of the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, the expansion of the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel. And you're right that, transportation is managed differently at all levels of government. There is funding from the federal government for transportation, the state level and the Virginia Department of Transportation, and they have a very, very defined process for prioritizing the projects that they do within VDOT. And then local governments also have responsibility for transportation programs and their roadways within their communities. So, managing and prioritizing all of those things can sometimes appear to be a challenge. When I came into office, my perception that the federal interstate highway system was largely, funded and built and maintained by the federal government is truly a misnomer. Here in Hampton Roads, because we have the additional regional gas tax that has actually allowed this region to be able to invest in a lot of these larger programs or these larger projects that we're doing that I mentioned. And those types of things are not available across the Commonwealth or across the whole country. It's a choice we made here to make that investment, but that was made at the state level for a regional program. So, one of the things, and this can all be tied into, as well, what does the economy look like on the other side of COVID, is that, one of the major things I think that we need to do as part of economic recovery from COVID is a major investment in infrastructure. For a variety of reasons. It creates new jobs, better transportation, leads to better access for businesses. And that includes, roads, bridges, tunnels, airports, ports. The deepening and widening of the Thimble Shoals Channel is a major project that will, make our port to 55 feet, which will be the deepest port on the East Coast and allow the largest super post-Panamax, size ships to call here, and we'll be the only port on the East Coast with that, and working closely with the Army Corps of Engineers to try to help move that project forward. But each one of these programs has different elements: federal funding matched with state funding, and also sometimes local funding involved to make each one of these projects come together. So I think transportation is one of those areas where we need to make that investment to help regrow the economy on the other side of the COVID pandemic. But it's also, I think, one of the most important areas where working together between federal, state, and local government is essential to making sure that we can provide the best, safest transportation network throughout our region.
Well, Congresswoman Elaine Luria, thank you so much. On behalf of our three chamber sponsors, Angie and I really appreciate the time you've taken to speak with us, and we look forward to sharing this conversation with the Peninsula's business community.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to work with your chambers, and I know it's not directly affiliated, but I'm very proud as well to have the endorsement from the U.S. Chamber. And really want to be able to continue serving in this capacity and helping our business community grow and recover from the COVID pandemic.
That's great.
Very good. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
They'll do their magic, and at some point, I believe tomorrow, they'll be available to watch, and we'll make sure that our folks, we have your team's email address that we've been working back and forth with. So we'll make sure that they get the information.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. I think this is great. It's a great way to, talk about important issues and get that information out to everybody. And really appreciate you including me.
Sure, absolutely.
Let's do it.
You've been doing okay?
Yeah, it's a busy time. Headed up early in the morning to DC again, but it's just been an interesting time. A lot going on. But I hope you and your families are all staying healthy, I hope.
Yeah.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Good. Well, it's good to see you, and thank you again. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you too.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay.
Hey guys, that was awesome.
Okay, we're done. High
Y'all did
five.
great. Awesome. She was very together. Yep.
Yeah.
Y'all have a good night.
Yeah.
Good rain.
Okay, thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.